So we are in the ancient practice of Advent. It's something we do every year, so you can expect it. In fact, not only that, I preached on love 3 times, so I usually preach this exact sermon. But don't worry, I have written a completely different one, so we'll talk about a different love. It's all good. But every year we go through the ancient practice of Advent. Our first week we talked about hope, and that hope is the expectant waiting for the promises of God to come true. There's no wishful thinking. Like I talked to my kids when we were going through Advent around the kitchen table. I said, "What is hope?" And they said something like, "I hope it won't rain." But that is not a good hope, especially right now. You will be disappointed a lot of times. Our hope is sure because we're hoping that the promises of God will be made good, and we know that He is that kind of God. And then we talked about peace. And the world brings peace. The world cannot bring peace except with peace by force, what the ancient Christians called Pax Romana, peace by force. That's the best that we can do. But Jesus offers us a peace that abides with us, a peace that is gentle and kind, and a peace that His indwelling in our world was able to bring about. And today we talk about love. And I can even see it. As as I said, we were going to talk about love. Everyone got a little bit looser. We love talking about love. That is one of our favorite topics in our culture. And if you don't believe me, go to the movie theater, go turn on the radio, go open a book or a poem. It is all about love. In fact, I had a poetry professor who said, all poets have ever had is love and death. Prove me wrong. So we have so much ink is spilled on the topic of love. We love it so much. Anything for love, everything for love. But as much as it is desired and longed for, we have an emaciated image of what love is. An image that came to my mind today was someone eating fried chicken, eating the skin of the fried chicken and then throwing the rest away. And that person could say, "I love fried chicken. It's so good." And they got the taste. But they're missing what it is in fact. And I think that's what we have when we talk about love. We're so focused on love that we get tunnel vision. And we think that this is the only thing that love can be. And actually there are many colors and ways that people love and are loved. So as preparation for our discussion of love, I want to start by pointing out one of our Greek words that we love so much. And we're not going to talk about agape love. We're going to talk about phileo. Phileo is another word for love. It is not the most common word in the Bible, but it is the second most, so a little respect for phileo. And if you're like, well, we talked about love and we didn't talk about agape love, if that is a problem for you, just know that we have the years prior sermons. You have my blessing to go back and listen to more sermons at home. They're on our website. But today we're talking about phileo and this companion friendship love. Because I want to underline the amazing depth of God's love, that it's actually, we think that agape can contain this love, but it actually spills out of that container, that word container. Phileo, it means love, regard with affection, treat affectionately or kindly, especially welcome and entertain. So like to welcome someone into your home. And people, especially in America, mistake phileo because we have a very useful city word Philadelphia, we know that's the city of brotherly love. That's literally what that means. But the problem is they think that that means that phileo is brotherly love. But actually, the brother part, that's adelphoi. So Philadelphoi, that's brothers. Phileo is just love. It is a different kind of love. It is a side-by-side or a back-to-back kind of love. It is the love of close companions and friends, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And I say this because I know what we were talking about, love, and I knew that if I said we were going to talk about friendship, there would be a revolt. Do you not know that we are lighting a candle for love? And what I want us to recapture is we have forgotten that friendship, true and deep friendship, is love. That is something that we're called to. That is something that we're given in Christ. And it's something that we should not let go. What we see of this friendship love in scriptures is instructive. So I'm going to throw out some of the passages where we talk about this phileo. The first one is with Lazarus and Jesus. So Jesus hears that Lazarus is sick because of a message from his sisters. And it says, so the sisters sent to him saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. That is that phileo word. And it's this idea like the person that you are in deep companionship with, that person is sick. And then we see that again when Jesus shows up. And he, knowing that he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead, because he said it before he started the journey. He arrives at the tomb, and just the sight of the tomb where his deep companion is buried causes him to weep. And the people around him say, see how he loved him. That word there is that phileo. See how he had deep companionship with Lazarus. There's also this kind of love that shares and shows everything. I like this example of phileo too, because it's actually showing that God is doing it. It's not just people, that God loves in a phileo way as well. So here, this is in John 5:20. For the Father loves the Son, that's the phileo, and shows him all that he himself is doing, and greater works than these will he show him, so that you may marvel. So there's this idea that this companionship love is really a sharing. Like, look at this. I want to show you this. I want you to understand this. Not that Jesus somehow needs to learn, but that an expression of that deep companionship, that friendship love that the Father and the Son share, is a sharing of things. It can also be turned into a noun. This happens a lot in Greek. So they'll take a verb and they'll, I'm going to say nounify it. The actual word is deverbalize, which is super fun to say. But it's to take this and make it known that this is now a noun. So when that happens, it can be translated friend or kiss. And so these are the deverbalized use of philos. In every single parable of the lost sheep, lost coin, and lost son, there is a call for the philos to come together and celebrate. She calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I have lost. The shepherd calls, rejoice with him, and the father calls to rejoice with him that his son is found. Some shocking use of phileo as a noun. We have in Mark 14:44, now the betrayer had given them a sign saying, the one I will kiss is the man. Seize him and lead him away under guard. The one whom I kiss, that's philos. And again, I want us to think about that just for an extra second. That what is actually being, because we think that kiss is just a sign. But what it's showing is that deep companionship. Like, the one I show deep companionship to, that's the one I'm going to betray. But it's the same word in Luke 7:37 through 38, where the woman who comes and washes Jesus' feet, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and wiped them with a hair of her head and kissed his feet and anointed them with the ointment. That is the same word. The same word that Judas betrays is the one that this woman shows. I have deep companionship with this person. And I think to myself, every time I recognize that, I think to myself, deceitful are the kisses of an enemy, but faithful are the wounds of a friend. This friendship love is one that rejoices with each other when rejoicing is called for. What I also like is they didn't call for mourning. Jesus knows when he arrives, it's time for mourning. So rejoicing is called for. Come celebrate with me. But the friends also, they know when they arrive, like, this is a time of mourning. Friendship love is something that is sharing and that shares with one another and cares with each other. And I want to just call that out, not as just a little thing, but it is actually an expression of love. I hope I can be forgiven for being especially drawn to the character of Jonathan in the Bible. I could not help but notice it growing up, so I kind of just read it a lot. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about Jonathan and David as friends. Just know that it being in the Old Testament, you will not see phileo in there because it is in a different language. But nevertheless, it really exemplifies the companionship, deep friendship love. And I think it's also important because David gets an awful lot of press, good press, usually. And people don't really look at Jonathan's role in that friendship. And so we're going to spend a little bit more time on Jonathan just to sort of underline that and to bring into focus that companionship love that we're talking about. So Jonathan is Saul's firstborn son, and he is the heir to the throne. Before David fights the giant, Jonathan actually has, I guess you could call it, two David versus Goliath moments right before we have David showing up. So Saul and Jonathan are going out to war. They have an army of 3,000, and they give Jonathan command of 1,000 of them. So most of the army is with Saul, and Jonathan has a third of them. And they're going off to war, and kind of Saul's army doesn't really do much, but Jonathan attacks a garrison and routs the enemy, and that is wonderful. Yay, everyone is happy, but the Philistines are not to be trifled with, and it kind of pokes the dragon, as it were. So then they send an enormous army. I was reading the Bible wrong, accidentally. And they said, oh yes, and they sent 30,000. I was like, wow, 30,000 troops? That is so much more than Jonathan and Saul have. And then I read it again. I said, oh no, 30,000 chariots. That's just one part of the army. So an enormous army comes in response to this attack on the garrison. And seeing that army arrayed in front of them, the people begin to desert because they know that there's not a chance for us on this one. And Saul is waiting 7 days for Samuel to show up and do a sacrifice. And he keeps not showing up. So at the 7th day, Saul says, forget this, I need God on my side right now, so I'm going to make it happen. And he usurps the role of priest and offers a sacrifice, even though he is not allowed to try to sort of force God to fight with him because he's scared. And that is the moment that God rejects Saul as king and puts into play changing the kingship to David. So that we were not going to talk about that part, but right after that, that is what Samuel, because Samuel shows up right when he does the sacrifice. And so you ever had that where you're like, well, I'm going to do the thing that I know I'm not supposed to do, and I'm going to do it, and then the person who can catch you just walks right in at that very moment. That is exactly what happened to Saul. But meanwhile, Jonathan and his armor bearer, so these two guys, they weren't there. They were just looking at another garrison. They were just, there's one over there, right there across this valley. And I just want you to catch what Jonathan says to his armor bearer. Jonathan said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few." And his armor bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart. Do as you wish. Behold, I am with you, heart and soul." Again, we're not even talking about this guy, but it looks like these two guys also have a deep companionship, friendship, love. Because he's like, yes, let's do it together. Let's do it. And here's their plan. This is their actual battle plan. So we're horribly outnumbered, right? Horribly, yeah. No chance of winning. Yeah. So what we're going to do is let's give up the element of surprise. Yeah. And we'll yell across the thing, and we'll say, if they want to fight us, that will be the sign that God has given them into our hands. That's the battle plan. If they see two guys and want to fight them, then we know that God is with us. And they do. And they attack the garrison, and they rout that one garrison with just the two guys. Keep in mind, before this, I didn't tell you this part, but during this battle, during this war, the Philistines would not allow the Israelites to make weapons. So weapons were a hot commodity, and there are only two swords in the entire country of Israel. One is in Jonathan's hand, the other is in Saul's hand. So Jonathan attacks with his armor bearer, routs the garrison. Only 50% of the swords in the country are being swung at this moment, okay? That sets off a chain reaction. Other garrisons see, oh, something's happening over there. We think we're being attacked. They start panicking and attacking each other and running away. And all this is happening while Saul and his not quite 600 minus 2, math is hard. I'm not going to just, people are sitting there worried that God is not going to help them. And then it's really funny, too, because then they start looking like, hey, those garrisons over there, they are in a panic. This might be a good time to attack. I think we got a chance. And then they were like, wait, do we have anybody over there? Do we have any soldiers that we sent? And they literally count, because they had no idea that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone. And so this is this massive moment. It frees the people. And so it's really interesting to me that not too long afterwards, we have this Goliath show up, taunting the armies. And you know who's there? Jonathan is there. And Saul is there. And Jonathan has had this amazing victory, 2 amazing victories, where there's no question that God was on his side. And yet, somehow, he can't make the jump. I mean, in his defense, it's hard. But he says, yeah, God is with me with the garrisons, but I don't know if God is with me with the giants. And that's when David shows up. And when David kills Goliath, immediately, Jonathan recognizes that. He gives him his sword. Maybe we're still 2 swords, as far as I know, 2 swords. So he gives him his sword. He gives him markers of his care and regard. A deep friendship is formed. And I think part of it is Jonathan sees 2 things. He sees, you see the faithfulness of God in battle like I see it. And you are even calling me out when I'm not courageous enough to live in that truth. But so you are making me understand and be faithful to God more. Because in that moment I couldn't do it, but you could. And that's why you're my friend. And indeed, they are two men cut from the same cloth. And that is not a bad image, because literally the scriptures say that the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. Good friends are both like you and unlike you. They're like you in that they see the truth. They're unlike you because they say, you can do better than that. And I know that you can do this. So then we come to that. So I just wanted to give that background because people miss that. They think that, I don't know, that there's just for some reason, these two men decided to be good friends. But no, they were already so alike. And when they saw each other, they said, there is one like me. That is someone I want to be in relationship with. And we come to the part of the story where most people do know this part of the story, that Saul becomes fearful, thinking that David is going to be king, which he is. And Jonathan decides, I'm with Team David. So he uses his place at the king's table to suss out if Saul really wants to kill David, even though actually Saul has taken already a few attempts on David's life. I think maybe Jonathan doesn't fully want to believe it, but he says, I'm going to go ask him, and he will tell me. But before he asks, this is what Jonathan says to David. If I am still alive, show me the steadfast love of the Lord, that I may not die, and do not cut off your steadfast love from my house forever, when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. And Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord take vengeance on David's enemies. And Jonathan made David swear again by his love for him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. And in part, I wanted to speak that verse in particular just to show just how many times love is appearing in this passage. It's appearing so much that it kind of makes us uncomfortable. But what is happening here with David and Jonathan is deep companionship love, not a diminutive friendship that we're talking about. And you know what else I like about this moment? Saul's fear is that David would be king. Jonathan is looking forward to the time when David will be king and saying, when that happens, remember my family. I think they've talked about it. I think they know his secret, that he has been anointed. So Jonathan goes to Saul, and Saul basically says, yeah, I want to kill him, and if I don't, you'll never be king. Again, Jonathan knows David will be king. Jonathan's response is, why should he be put to death? What has he done? Immediately jumps to the defense of his friend, but Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him. So Jonathan knew that his father was determined to put David to death. And Jonathan rose up from the table in fierce anger and ate no food for the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, because his father had disgraced him. So David immediately defends his friend and takes a spear for him. It's actually also interesting that not that long ago, Saul has already done this, thrown a spear at David. Now he's throwing a spear at Jonathan. He is literally taking abuse that was meant for David, and they're sharing in that danger together. And then their final kind of moment together, Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, because we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my offspring and your offspring forever.'" And he rose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. This friendship goes beyond just sharing time together or going to the movies or eating a meal. They're promising to care for each other's family in the event that they are killed for generations and generations. And it's good that they do that, because actually Jonathan is going to die. He dies in battle. He was killed with Saul, and it says that his body was found near Saul. So we intimate from that Jonathan was defending his father when he fell. But it's also really beautiful to me, because somehow Jonathan was able to be loyal to his father and loyal to his friend, even though it seems like that would be impossible. He had deep wells of loyalty to draw on. And when David is the unquestioned king of Israel, David does not forget the promises that were made. David makes good on that, remaining a faithful friend even after Jonathan was gone. This takes up actually quite a ways later in 2 Samuel 9:1. David said, "Is there anyone left of the house of Saul, that I might show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" And when he shows up, the last son of Jonathan, this is what David, because this last son of Jonathan could be a rival heir. So this last son of Jonathan was expecting kind of that he would be executed. But this is what David says to him. And David said to him, "Do not fear, for I will show you kindness." The word right there, I'm going to just pause for a second. That word right there is actually love. It's chesed. I will show you covenant love. "Do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore to you all the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always." May we all have a friend like that, and may we all be friends like that. And I think it's important for Christians to reclaim this love, because it flies in the face of the lie of our culture, which, like all powerful lies, starts with a perverted truth at its kernel. We have that image of Adam alone in the garden, and God said, "It is not good for man to be alone," and so he creates Eve. That is the truth. They come together, they become married. There is a sense that man by itself, the gender of maleness by itself, is not truly complete without the gender of female. But God did not say it is not good for man to be unmarried. He said it is not good for man to be alone. God said it is not good for man to be alone. God is saying that mankind, and indeed men and women, were created for companionship. Whether that companionship leads to marriage, that is one thing, but it is not good for man to be alone. And it reminds us that this friendship love, deep companionship, is an important part of the goodness of creation, and we are less without it. We were meant to have friends like David and Jonathan. But our culture is so focused on romantic and sexual love that it has completely lost sight of the power and goodness of covenant friendships. That friendship is a worthy love as well. There's the idea that, oh, friendship love is fine and good until you find the real thing. And even worse, as people become romantically connected to one another, sometimes they will systematically cut off the friendships that they have. And that hurts both with this idea that we were meant to have covenant friendships with one another, but also it's dangerous because as we put more and more of our relationship need into one person, we are heaping the weight of that need for love on one person, which it makes them have to carry a heavy load, but it also makes it disastrous if that person were to have a bad day when you need them. Consequences of disaster get more real because we are so focused on romantic love and we have cut off this idea of friendship, companionship, love, and it is not there when we need it. And we are suffering from a loss of knowledge that that is a true love in itself. Not only that, we are suffering from a particularly bad time in our culture with friendship, as not saying that that COVID caused all of this problem. I think it was already happening in the world. But as we shut ourselves up into our house, as we make the change from friendships with a person in a chair opposite to us, and we talk about friendships that are digital friendships where we've never met this person from another country, we are losing a persistent human presence of love and friendship. And that trajectory, if that continues, we are in for a lot of trouble. And I know, too, because I'm an introvert, so I'm already awkward with talking with people. If you would like a demonstration, you can talk to me after service. I already, I think, I want to hang out with someone. I guess I'll have to call them. There is no greater fear that I have than picking up a phone and dialing a number. That is just, as an introvert, it's really, really hard. And again, as the culture has been changing and pushing us towards this, it has become even worse for introverts. Now it feels practically alien to reach out to someone and try to actually connect with them as a person. And I want to say this as an introvert too, just because if there are other introverts out here who feel similarly, I know what I'm asking is hard. And it's hard for me and it's hard for you, but we can do this together. We can actually relate. It is worth it because, as was said in the garden, it is not good for us to be alone. And it also challenges that worship of sexual love that our culture has gone after. Friendships can be deep and loving and a real love. And love is more than sex. It is larger than marriage or romance. And it is good for us to remember to write songs and stories about friendship love as a real thing. One of the things that I was thinking about when I was preparing this was the idea of bromance, if you've seen that. It's talked a lot about when you watch movies. They're like, oh, those two have a bromance. I don't know if there's a word for that for women. Is there one? I don't know. I couldn't think of one. But there's this idea, there's two men in a story that for some reason have what appears to be a covenantal friendship. And the word that has come up with that is bromance. And I think partly it is because we are uncomfortable with that thought. So because we are uncomfortable with that thought that there could be people like that who have that deep, deep relationship that is not romantic at all, we've come up with a sort of joke to deal with it. In fact, again, I Googled famous bromances, and almost all of them, well, okay, not almost all of them, many, many, many of them were from comedies. Again, because we've considered it almost as a joke, because we're uncomfortable with the idea that there could be deep and covenant friendships. We often note that God has tied his identity to the image of marriage, and that is true. But God has also tied his identity and image to that of deep covenantal friendship. Jesus himself talks about his relationship with his disciples and the change that was happening, that they're moving now from servants to friends. At Northside, we often talk about Jesus is not just your friend. For you to take his word as advice, like you might for a friend, like you should go see this movie, it's pretty good. Or, yeah, I'll take that under advisement, Jesus, that's really good. But the truth is that the reason why we have to say that is because that our understanding of friendship is so underdeveloped. Jesus is our friend. He is not our bro. He is our deep covenantal friendship friend. Not in a diminutive sense, but in the deep richness of covenantal friendship. And in fact, Jesus came to earth to make that possible. One of the reasons why we see agape so used in the Bible is that the other options don't work very well. There's a storge, which is love of parent to child and child to parent. Problem with using that too much, it's not actually used of God. It's actually, the only times that it's used is in the scriptures are negatively and about human parents. So there's only 2 of those instances there. But it doesn't work so well with talking about God, even though God is our Father, because there is sort of like rights and commitments. So that the parent, in some ways, is required to love the child, and the child is sort of required to love back because of their filial responsibility, but God does not have a filial responsibility to us. Sorry, I said filial. That means family. I get excited about words, and sometimes I use them. So the reason why we don't have a storge love of God is because God is not bound to us in that way. He chooses to love us in that way. That's why agape is so good. The reason why phileo is not so good talking about the relationship with God is that we have a sin problem, and we cannot be friends with God. But that is what the story of Jesus coming into this world is meant to say. He wanted to be deeply covenantal friends with us, and he chooses that, and he had to deal with the sin to make that happen. So before, we couldn't talk about the friendship love of God with us, but now in a post-cross world, we can be friends of God. We are friends of God. And that is the story of Christmas and Easter. That movement towards, I'm going to solidify friendship with my people. So as application, I want us to reconsider the companionship love that we have in our relationships with God. And I want to ask you these questions to reflect on at home and to take action on. But is there a covenant friendship that needs making or renewing? Are you being called to share the danger or advocate for a friend? Are you being called to grieve or to celebrate with friends? Cultivating deep friendships during these times. It feels awkward and uncomfortable, but we must prioritize that. We must prioritize friendship love in our lives and welcome it into our other important relationships. Because ultimately, that is one of God's gifts to us. That His love is so much bigger than just one thing, and that we were called to experience that richness with each other and with Him. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you that you took the step that was required so that we could be friends with you in deep covenantal relationship. God, we pray that you would teach us, strengthen us, and prepare us for these kinds of relationships in this week and going throughout. Thank you for your gift of your Son. In Jesus' name, amen.